Hey, welcome to another edition of the Damn Music Show. This is the COVID-19 edition. Both Mike and I were exposed to some people that are tested positive, so we're doing it from our home today, but it's going to be just as fun and exciting. We have a new segment for you. It's called Whole Lot of Lists, and today we're going to talk about
a whole lot of lists.
Yes. We're going to talk about guitar players. Mike and I are both guitar players. We love great guitarists. We love mediocre guitarists. So we're going to give you our top 3 favorite guitarists, or at least 3 guitar players we really like. These are not the best guitarists because that is a senseless conversation that would go on forever and ever and ever.
Infinite battle with no resulting winner.
We're going to list who they are and why we like them. And we could probably talk, Mike and I could probably talk 10 hours about this, but we'll keep our comments somewhat concise. So, Mike, I start off the show. Why don't you start off the list?
Well, let's do that. Now, let's do 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. And can we go top down? So can we start? Actually, can we go bottom? Let's go bottom up. So let's start at our. Can we do 4? I kind of want to do 4. Let's do our. Okay, so we're gonna do 4, and I'm gonna start with my number 4th person.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna start with a total curveball. I was thinking originally when we started, I'd go the other direction and the obvious ones first. But my number 4.
I have a baseball bat right here. So throw the curve, I'm gonna hit it right there.
Get ready to hit it. So my number 4 favorite guitarist, and again, we are favorite guitarists. We're not doing best. My number 4 favorite guitarist, due to a couple things: their creativity, their ingenuity, and their drive based on 0 success during their lifetime. Nobody knew this person. In fact, they sold 5,000 CDs by the time they died.
Yeah.
Now,
well, success is not always. Look, there are plenty of successful people in a lot of industries that are not necessarily great. They're in the right place at the right time. So,
I agree. You don't need a trophy in order to prove that you're great. But this is one of those people that nobody knew about. Everybody, or a lot of people, know about now. One of my favorite guitarists of all time is Nick Drake. Nick Drake is more of a songwriter. But anyone that really knows Nick Drake and has tried to play Nick Drake will stumble and rarely succeed. He played in alternate tunings all the time. Very complicated finger picker with very complicated melodies and really wonderful theory. So he died at 26, sold 5,000 CDs. Nobody knew his name. It is hyper depressing. You know, if you're looking to sip some whiskey and sit in a dark chair in a dark corner, that is what Nick Drake is for. But also so authentic and so real. And really, for me, maybe the best I know that mixed finger picking with storytelling with complex theory and still made it seem.
So what time period for those people? Yeah, those people don't know 60s. Nick Drake. What time period are we talking about from when to when? The 60s?
He was in the 60s. Yeah, I think he died late 60s. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty positive. I think it was like.
Was 60s. He a solo artist or did he play in a band?
It was just him, Nick Drake, and he played finger picking, lived in his parents' attic, suffered depression, like many people and artists, and really just kind of continually worked on his craft and got turned down everywhere for his whole career until he overdosed. And what they called was an overdose, but they think it was an accident. He was prescribed 2 drugs that shouldn't have gone side by side: a sleeping medication and an antidepressant. So gone too young, as they say. But I've never heard anyone that's so, for me, mentally expansive in the way they address theory and put the story together. So good.
All right, so everybody check out Nick Drake. My number 4 is a guy a little more known in the world than Nick Drake. Mine is Brian May of Queen.
Of course.
Brian May, I think, is a world-class guitar player who had the fortune and misfortune of playing alongside Freddie Mercury. And Freddie was obviously the star of the show multiple times. And I think sometimes Brian got lost in the shadow there. Now,
isn't that like the great dilemma between like everyone, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, like name every famous guitar singer duo. It's like a wide receiver and a quarterback.
Yeah, and if you look at Brian's playing and his career and himself, I get the sense from his interviews and movies that he was okay being second fiddle.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that he has collaborated with Adam Lambert. And his ego aside and willing to work with new artists, he jumps up. He was in a play that they did in the early 2000s on Broadway,
right on.
Where he came out and played with Broadway stars. And He used to play with Paul Rogers, who I think was the lead singer of Bad Company. He's a musician, I think.
Agree, very much.
And Queen played techno, they played classic rock, they played blues, they played acoustic. He played a lot of different styles, and I get the sense that Brian really enjoys experiment in the process of music, and he's technically and a good guitar player, and he also got a lot of feel. So my number 4 is Brian May of Queen.
Man, I'm super with it. It also helps to be an astrophysicist, a producer. Like he's got like every credential known to man. It's like, oh yeah, let me go be in this band Queen while I'm an astrophysicist over here. Be casual. Yes, so well thought through. Talk about applying theory into everything. Fantastic. Yes, agree. Okay, we going up the ladder. My number three is from the one and the only. This is going to catch me a lot of flack, but in my opinion, love one of, if not the best, metal bands, rock bands of all time. It is Kirk Hammett from Metallica. The guy knows how to put all the right notes in the right place and keep you, bend it, grab you, pull, wait for it, and finish every time. His hands are meticulous. He plays so quickly and so thoroughly, but also so clean and so precise. And on top of it, he's just a humble guy. Any interviews, he's always like, well, they can talk. I'm just going to play my guitar. So my number 3 favorite guitarist, and probably because I was exposed to them when I was 13. First album I got was Kill 'Em All from Metallica. In fact, I got Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and everything else. A lot of people will be like, oh, Metallica's soft. Well, whatever. They're great at what they do, and I fully stand by it. Kirk Hammett is my number 3.
Yeah, well, luckily they had Lars there to take up all the speaking that Kirk did.
And to take all the trash and flack, which well, it's an interesting thing. He's got a big mouth, so you're going to catch a lot when you have a big mouth. But in his defense, he was trying to do the right thing for his artists, and his explanation was basically like, look, I have people on our record label that are not famous yet, and when this money gets taken away from them, I cannot support them on a record label, and then we can't push them through. So I don't know if it came from the great place, but that was his defense, that when money went to LimeWire and Napster, that he could no longer afford to pay the touring acts that were coming up. So
I wasn't referencing that. It's just usually when the band speaks, it's usually Lars.
Always Lars. Kirk's like, I'm going to go ride my horses in Colorado.
So my number 3 is probably one a lot of people have not heard of, and I do think he's underrated. His name is Rick Emmett, and he was the lead singer and guitarist for a band called Triumph. And for those people that don't know the band Triumph, see if this sounds familiar. They came about in the late 70s, got fame in the early 80s. They were a power trio that played rock, but almost kind of progressive rock from Canada. So Triumph had the misfortune of having a very similar look and feel and setup of a little band called Rush. And the trio from Canada, Rick Emmett, in addition to writing all the songs and having a really high-pitched, beautiful voice, what I like about him is we talk a lot on this show about the simplification of music today. Triumph played some very complicated songs with inversions and jazz chords and all that. And they have hits that were 5 and 6 minutes long. They got played on the radio. Rick has the ability to be a speed demon, but he's a very melodic player. So he played the verse, chorus, bridge, and then he would start off the solo with a melody, a quick run to show his speed, and then always get back to that hook. Very melodic players, put the structure of the song together. I never thought Triumph got their due in terms of success. They were always tend to be the opening band, but I think Rick Emmett and the Speed Demon, Shredders, Metalheads in the 80s really got lost in the shuffle, and he's just an all-around player. So Rick Emmett is my 3rd.
Yeah, we're definitely showing our preference. Yeah, our preference is obviously melodic so far, and not necessarily speed. But again, that's us, and we're talking about the people we love. So okay, I'm gonna go with my number 2. My number 2 again is a wonderful, for me, does mix some speed, but absolutely message first. And my number 2 is Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits. I love guys that can write riffs, write licks, write songs, play solos, shred for 20 minutes. Mark could do it all. And he really was like a very progressive feature in that era. his guitar tone for me is what just seals it. There's some guitarists, even guitarists today, that I love, but I don't love their tone. And again, that's personal preference. But man, Mark, just his tone, so fantastic. And he really kind of brought in country and Western chicken picking, hybrid chicken picking. And he played with his fingers a lot. And he played finger picking style that made it have a pop to it, a real click. And I love that about Mark. So Mark is my number 2 because of his phrasing, because of how he plays quarterly and he leans into it, but his tone to this day kills me. And I don't think he put that much in front of it. I think he kept it pretty simple, plugged it into the amp and went for it. So it's in his hand. And
I agree that my favorite thing about him is the tone. Here's how you know Knopfler is a great guitar player. If you listen to any guitar over the last 30 years and they say, and you ask them who they like, they all almost list Knopfler as one of their influencers or somebody they admire. He's a musician, and he came in at a time he was really sort of the anti-rock star. He's a bald guy who wore a band or a headband on his
tennis bands and stuff.
He was a damn man. He was all about the music, and he was sort of an anti-rock star. You speak in past tense. He's still out there making music and touring. And
I just saw him. I saw him 2 years ago, thankfully. Yeah, I fully agree. And like anyone we've listed, and pretty much anyone that we will list, in order to make the list, this has to be a thing. But with Mark, it's very much that. You could play me 2 notes, and I could pretty much tell you every time it's Knopfler. You could put 10 guitars side by side, play me 2 to 5 notes, and I can tell you that one's Knopfler.
And like, that alone
sounds like Knopfler.
Yeah, that alone is accomplishment to sort of master a particular sound or tone.
Agree. For me, mastering himself is what that's about. He mastered the things that he loved. Okay, you're up.
My second one is one that people are going to know the least amount. He is from the Austin area. Mike and I both like this guy a lot. He does play very quickly. Melodic. And speaking of tone, I think it's all about tone. This guy's name is Monty Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't seen him, I've been watching for 20, 25 years. He plays this tricked up, beat up acoustic guitar and gets just ridiculous tones out of it. Classically trained, I would think, by the way he plays. He plays quarterly, he does play quarterly, but he plays chromatically. However, he pivots on the roots a lot.
He uses the classic, I get to put any note I want in any order because I know what I'm doing so well. Right. So he transitions between, hey, here's a chord, let me slip down chromatically to the next shape of my chord. You're absolutely correct. But he utilizes transitioning between chords chromatically and beyond.
Guitar One magazine, if you put any street cred into this, lists him as one of the top 10 live guitarists on the planet. I
fully agree.
People go to watch just him play guitar. It's really a sight to see.
I could not agree more. I mean, he is just absolutely mind-bending. And if I was picking the people that I thought were like the greatest over my favorite, he would be put in. Absolutely, he would rotate out. Those are my favorites. He is one of the greatest.
Well,
holy cow, man!
A month or so ago, there was a challenge on Facebook and social media. It was like, hey, list the 10 albums that shaped the music you listen to. And I actually listened to, I actually listed Monty Montgomery's album, First in Repair. That was the album in early 2000 that turned me on to this idea that there were musicians in the world that didn't have big record labels behind them.
Right.
That were worth paying attention to. And I think Monty was the first. Pretty sure Monty was the first musician in my life that I was a fan of that didn't have a big record label behind it, and I couldn't get over how good and talented that guy was.
It is. If you haven't seen Monty, and a number of you watching the show live in Austin, Texas, you get on it. And maybe we're in a situation where we can't go see live music. The second you can, I'm telling you, we went and saw him in Fredericksburg in front of 100 people at dinner eating food. It is ridiculous that this guy is playing those settings. Absolutely, like you cannot care about guitar and he will melt your brain and your ability to process. Like you'll just sit and stare. So well done. I love Monty.
Yeah, so drum roll, man. We're at the number one.
Number one for me is unarguable. Likely because they frankly probably shaped much of my life. from how he played guitar and how they wrote music. A lot of my guitarists come down to actually songwriting. If you look at all my selections, I think Metallica is unbelievable at writing songs. They're so catchy. Nick Drake was a songwriter. Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits, really a songwriter. But they mastered guitar to go with it. This is that for me as well. The guitar is every bit as good as the lyrics and the message in it, and they built it and crafted to it. It is my favorite guitarist is from Pink Floyd, which is going to be David Gilmour, and I will forever and always be closest to Floyd and what they put forward. Probably shaped me. I mean, it shaped most of my life. 18 to 27, I pretty much put every Floyd album on once a week.
Yeah, I for me, the people that are Gilmour fans, I have found are the most passionate about Gilmour being their favorite and or guitar favorite. So it's and that's not a judgment or knock or anything like that, but it's sort of like when you meet that true craft beer person and they want to tell you for 20 minutes why an IPA is not any good and a Pilsner is, or this or that.
And you're probably never going to get to the level of the reason why they love it, but they're probably right. Like they probably put a lot of time into going, this is really great.
But Gilmour fans, I have for 30 or 40 years, is sort of like being proud from Austin or being proud from Texas or America, whatever. Gilmour people are superbly passionate.
We're a little ravenous. I fully agree.
Which is awesome.
I just can't get. I can't tell you how much. Again, so that my top two for me, honestly, it's tone.
Right.
But Gilmour, gosh, I mean, it's amazing, and he really pioneered a lot of it. If you listen to, because Floyd 70s, late 60s, 70s, and so the tone that came about in the 80s that was used by everybody else, guess where that came from?
Right.
It came from Gilmour. I mean, Gilmour, he really mastered delay, reverb, amps, and his hands. His hands were marvelous.
Well, speaking of innovation, my number one is known for innovation as well, and I'm happy to say I saw him plenty of times in his heyday when I was a teenager, and he was known in his genre for tone, building his own gear, style of playing, and that is Eddie Van Halen. And I think non-Van Halen fans will think of Eddie as a speed demon, which he is and was. However, what he's really known is for his riffs, and his riffs are unique. They break the mold of 1, 4, 5, 6 progressions. But his tone and his technology, he ripped guitars apart and put them together. And his famous red and white stripe one he calls the Frankenstein guitar, because he built it out of all of his parts and different things he liked. But the whole tapping technique, he wasn't the first to do that, but he was the first to sort of bring it into the limelight and make it a routine.
Was he not the first? Because the big story of Eddie Van Halen is that he played facing backward. So that no one could see. So did he get it from somebody else?
There's him doing that there. There is a documentary.
I thought he was one of the very first.
He was so Eddie was definitely one of the first, but I have read that like the jazz players did that as far back as the 50s and 60s.
I mean, I would be very, very surprised if Eddie was like the actual first. And in fact, I should probably know the answer to this myself.
Here's what Eddie.
What? People probably did it, but they didn't do it like Eddie. I mean, they might have like jumped up there and tapped around a little bit a few times, but Eddie took it to the next level.
Well, here's what Eddie would do. He would play. Most guitar players play between their thumb and their first finger, right? He would play between his thumb and his middle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he would pick and strum like this and leave his index finger for tapping. So little things like that, and he put the whammy bar dive into regular songs, but he really
that is definitely
found in a lot of different ways. And the last thing I'll say is there's a song called Ice Cream Man, which starts off acoustic.
Mm-hmm.
And it has this monster solo on it. It has a six fret stretch solo on there. And I just don't know a lot of guitarists that can do that. But Eddie was a true rock star in every sense of the word. But his story is that he was a kid that moved from Holland to America when he was 10, didn't speak the language. And it's the story we hear a lot of guitar players. He sat in his room for 7 hours a day and just played guitar because he didn't have any friends that didn't speak the language and that whole bit. But in the 80s, Eddie was the golden rock guitar player.
Oh, God.
But I think it was built on true musicianship and listen to his riffs. And Eddie for me will be my Gilmore. He's just beyond.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So we've learned something though, that you do like speed. Your top two are like some of the fastest players of all time.
Yeah, but they're speed, but it's.
I certainly don't mean it as a critique. I just
to me, shredders, if you can't play melodically or with some basic theory, I'm not as impressed with the.
I've never met a shredder that doesn't know his theory inside and out.
Yeah.
But that plays melodically, that can definitely be a thing. Or I mean, it's arguable because melodically inside jazz is going to be one thing, inside other things. So melodically inside of a digestible mass appeal, which I think is very important. I think that's
if you look at the guy I mentioned, Rick Emmett, just fast as anyone else, but he didn't pull that trick out very often. He was all about roots, thirds, and fifths, man, and getting that melody and that hook. So I place melody over speed, but if you can do both, then more power to you. So
love it.
That's our top 4.
Yeah.
Guitars that are favorites. So for a whole lot of lists, and if you guys want to hear list, if you want to hear a list of our favorite singers, favorite guitar intro.
I'm sorry. Apparently, we had a whole lot of lists, but Jimmy Page didn't get up there, and that's hard. That's hard because I thought about it many times. Love Page.
Well, there's I think Rolling Stone put out a list a long time ago, 10 years ago. It was like the top 100 guitars. So there's 100 guitars we're talking about. Again, these aren't the best these are the ones that we like for the personal reasons that we got. But this is the Damn Music Show, special COVID quarantine at home edition. Do not forget to subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Comment below because it helps the algorithm and make us famous. Which is really what this whole thing's about. No,
that's right.
About we love music and we hope that you do too. And a whole lot of lists. We'll see you in the next video.
Thanks everybody for watching. Cheers.